Okay, I know I kind of left a bombshell at the end of the last part of this video series, but that's what happens when you got a 15-minute limit and you can't just keep talking. So anyway, I got to backtrack with Christianity. What happened with that was that they took a man who had opposed the religious hypocrisy of the day, and they basically murdered him. And the reason why I kind of disagree with the doctrines, not necessarily the philosophy of Christ or Jesus as he was known, but the doctrine that was formulated afterwards, is because it tends to focus on the death and celebrate it as a good thing. And I'm going to tell you why that's dangerous, or why that philosophy is kind of an inroad into the psychology of Christians. We have to understand that the people in control of religions are not good. The ones who formulated them are not good. They're placed as icons and put on a pedestal as heroes, when the reality is that usually the origins of the religions are politically based, and they use these religions as a unifying force and a psychological tool to force people to support the state. And they do it by psychology. They don't really do it most of the time by, especially today, by outright forcing someone either by death or whatever. In the past they did. So this might make you mad, you might take it personally, but it's not directed at you personally. It's to get you to understand the psychology behind it and why it's dangerous. Anyway, let's talk about some of the bywords in Christianity that are used a lot. One is prayer. Now, the root word for prayer in the Latin is precari. This root word is the same as the word that we use to describe a dangerous situation, precarious, as if you're hanging off a cliff. Now, why this is important is because precari gives us the word picture of a master lording over their slave, and this person is being terrorized, as often masters, Roman masters would do. And they are begging for their life. And this master can kill them or can decide to be merciful. I completely disagree with this picture of a deity, because it sends the wrong message. We should not be equating a deity with evil. I don't care what you use to justify it. I don't care how you try to sugarcoat it. Any benevolent deity should not be equated with evil. And this is what this word does. It conditions the mind into accepting violence and terror. And we have to be conscious of that. Another thing is that the ancient Egyptian religion was largely based off of spells and incantations and invoking past events or heroes to support what their wishes were. So we see this all the time in Christianity. They evoke a hero of the faith or some such thing. What this does is it mimics the evocation of the Egyptian witchcraft. And you might say, well, you're accusing me of witchcraft. Well, I'm not accusing you, but you've kind of been tricked into it, is what I'm saying. And the stance of prayer is usually kneeling with your hands clasped. This also mimics the Egyptian prayer model, and the fact that they used to use to invoke these spells, little clay figurines where they would clasp the wrists together and bind them, hands and feet, and then they would stamp on them and shatter them. This is how they would enact a spell. So by the very act of someone clasping their hands and kneeling, they are symbolically mimicking these bound figurines. So it's a roundabout way of celebrating bondage. And these New World Order globalists know this because they practice this sort of witchcraft. So they have sneakily added these things into the Christian religion to trick people into not only celebrating their rituals, but performing these rituals incognito. They got you doing it and you don't even know it. That's the danger of it. So we've got that problem, and we have to recognize it. And also the word religion is kind of a form of infiltration, because religion literally means bondage. Bet you didn't know that. So it's kind of a sick joke for them to say that you have freedom of religion, because it means freedom of bondage. But anyway, these are some bywords in Christianity, and the reason why I am completely against it, now that I've made it obvious, is because I don't want to commit a form of witchcraft because someone tricked me into it. You have to understand, the origins of these religions is not holy men. These are politically motivated people that did this. Case in point, Constantine recognized that his empire was shattered. He needed to unify his empire. So what did he do? He realized that the largest spiritual movement was Christianity. And at the time, Christianity was fractious. It had so many different sects, it was ridiculous. Each different group had different ideas and doctrines. So what he sought to do is say, okay, well, since they are the majority, and I also have a minority of pagans, what I'm going to do is fuse all of them into one and force them, by threat of death, if necessary, to fall under one umbrella, one religion, and then I will adopt that religion as the state religion, the sanctioned religion, the state supported, and it will be instituted. You will have to follow this religion if you want to be a Roman. And so this is the origins of the Roman Catholic Church. Regardless of what people might think, this is how it was instituted in Rome. Catholics might be mad at me for saying that, but it is the truth. Roman Catholicism and what has sprung from it, whether it's Protestantism or not, all follow the same basic doctrines. And they're all state-centered doctrines. You have to recognize that. This is why I do not adhere to the doctrines. Instead of celebrating Jesus' death, what I do is celebrate his life. How do I do that? I recognize the philosophy. Jesus was the ultimate sheepdog. He was the ultimate psychologist. If you study it in depth, you will see that what he was doing is exactly what should be done with people. You teach them. You gain their trust. You open their mind to new ideas. You don't condemn them. And what that does is it spouts a growth spurt of free thinking and ideas and goodwill. And so this is what he did. And it's often overshadowed by his death, because the globalists, the New World Order, even as it was active back in Constantine's day, want to focus on his death. They want to celebrate it for their obscene ritual, and they want to create hero worship so that you focus on a centralized figure, and then by de facto psychology, you automatically transpose that psychology to the central figure of the state. It's a trick of psychology, so watch out for that. And in the last 5 minutes that I've got here, I'm going to try to go down a road that I know a lot of people don't like either. You may be an adherent to Islam. I am not faulting anyone who does, because there's a lot of good principles in there. However, the extremism that we have seen in the last several years, and what automatically people associate with Islam, is the reason why there are dangers there. I'm going to try to explain it as best I can. Now, I know I said that I believe that maybe Muhammad was brainwashed to a certain extent, and I only say that because his inability to control what he called the recitations in any sort of organized fashion at all is just random, and leads me to believe this. So it was either a Catholic priest who is very versed in the art of mind control that did this to him, or there's still a possibility open that it was some other being, and you can call them demons if you want to, or angels, it doesn't matter. They could be posing as such, because when you control the mind, you can insert ideas and false events and other things. You got to do some research on that. It's interesting. But just the fact that he could not control what he was saying leads me to believe that he was somewhat brainwashed. And even though there are good ideas, compassion, fairness, and other teachings in there, the danger arose when it too became a state religion. And the reason why that happened was because of his followers. If you read between the lines, constantly Muhammad was chastising people for being too extreme, for killing people that, there was no reason to kill. He believed in private prayer and worship and did not want to institutionalize it. All he wanted to do was share his views for the most part. But his followers insisted that it become institutionalized, and that this prayer that he was saying was private be public. So that was one of the first steps. Then they fought over who would be in charge after he died. And then further on from there, when the Ottoman Empire started to flex its muscles and take over as a caliphate, they added the hadith, something Muhammad specifically warned against. Stories that were attributed to him. He specifically warned against it, and they did it anyway. So now you've got several schools of thought. Some people think this group of hadith is right. Some people think that group of hadith is correct. When the truth is, none of them are correct. They're all suppositions. They're all classified according to whether or not they are sahih or not, and which means whether or not they're more likely to be true. But you can't go off of likeliness. You have to go off of fact. So what has happened is they've used these stories to generate support or give an excuse as to why they can be extreme, and they can use deadly force to push a religion on another. And so I think I've shown why that is dangerous, and regardless of whether someone believes it or not, there is a movement in Islam that's kind of encouraging, because it's called the God Alone movement. And these people don't believe in public prayer. They don't believe that you have to make the pilgrimage. They do not, they're discarding almost completely all of the high-profile doctrines of extremist Islam and some of the more mainstream doctrines that they believe are a danger, because they understand that it was a state-controlled religion, and that worship, your form of religion, is a very private matter, and it should not be forced on anybody. So, and they don't see converts, they just want to be left alone. And they just want to enlighten other Muslims to renew their ideas, and to kind of get away from all that extremism, or not leave any inroads to it. So anyway, that's the reason why I don't adhere to Islam, is because there's a danger there of hero worship and yeah.